It goes without saying that you should watch this video before you buy iRacing Arcade or before you think about not buying iRacing Arcade, because this game is going to cause a load of confusion. It's another racing game that's going to come out in a confusing state. So I'm here to cut through it. Now, I think part of this is going to be because I predict a lot of the reviews in this game are going to be lazily done. They're going to be lazy reviews, and also the game itself doesn't help itself. So part of the best way I can start this video is by showing you a little clip of what I said in early October 2025 about iRacing Arcade. I'm going to say something to start with. This is not really, in my view, an iRacing game. Like, I think if you come into this thinking this is iRacing, you're going to be disappointed. I think it's great that it has the iRacing license. I think it's great that it has the official license for the cars and the tracks. But I wouldn't, just don't come into it thinking, I think iRacing has connotations that this is going to be some kind of insane sim and it's going to be really realistic, and that's not the case. Now, I personally have quite a good insight here because, in full disclosure, as I always say on these videos about iRacing Arcade, I worked on the original Circuit Superstars. I know what that game was good at, I know what that game was not good at, and I know what it needs to be better at for iRacing Arcade to be a success. And ever since this game has been called iRacing Arcade, I have predicted that it's going to cause a ton of problems, because iRacing is the hardest of hardcore simulations. You don't have fantasy cars in there. You don't have fantasy tracks in there. It's all proper simulation to the point it's really trying to, in a way, we've talked about this, be a competitor to real-world motorsport in terms of, yes, there's a subscription and everything, but it's way cheaper than real-world motorsport, but you still get a lot of the same feelings. iRacing Arcade is a pretty pure arcade game with a surprisingly, in a racing game sense these days, a surprisingly, inverted commas, deep career mode. Now, I still want to caveat that with quotation marks, but I think you will initially at least be surprised at the depth there is to the career mode. For example, this has big Gran Turismo B-spec elements, which is quite interesting. Now, when I say some of the reviewing will be lazy on this, it's been evident since the beginning, since this game was unveiled, and if you know anything about the lineage of Circuit Superstars, that this is not going to be a simulation game. This is not going to be a game that you will play on a racing rig with a racing wheel and pedals. This is a game that will be played best on a controller, and it's not going to have any hardcore simulation in it. The handling is not going to be simulation. So I think any reviewer that reviews this game on the basis that they're surprised that's the case, if they should probably be letting people know that this isn't what this game ever set out to be. However, I don't think the game helps itself by being called iRacing Arcade and having iRacing branding in there, and also having the iRacing series in there, like the same logos and everything, because it will confuse people. And I just know there's going to be a load of people that will ask me, will ask on the comments this video maybe, like, can I use my steering wheel on this? Can I use my racing? Is it force feedback compatible? And the answer is like, no, this is a controller game. It's an arcade game. It's a game that you play on the sofa, probably best. It's a game that is going to be fun for kids to play, and therefore it cannot be all things. Like, this is not a simulation. And also it's a little bit confused because there are only, as far as I can tell, 2 real-world cars in the game at the moment of 8. You have the Fiat 500 and you have the Porsche GT3. It's great to see officially licensed cars. They look really good. It reminds me of, like, there's something connected with like collecting model cars with the way it kind of looks. But then the rest of the cars look to be unlicensed or, like inspired by certain classes of motorsport. And it's a bit of a shame that with the iRacing license, we haven't been able to have a fully licensed series of cars. Also, the car collection of 8 cars is not by any stretch of the imagination a big car collection. Even these days, by games like Mario Kart and these really arcadey games, they have incredible rosters of different characters and cars and whatever. So starting with 8 is very light, and it is going to feel light. The tracks kind of feel varied, but again, for this game to be successful, there's going to need to be more tracks, and the mixing of fancy tracks and real world tracks, again, it's just going to be uncomfortable for people that come into this thinking iRacing. Now, when I show you some stuff here, this is the career mode stuff. Did you know there are power-ups in this game? So there are power-ups where you get like extra boost on the first lap, or when you get overtaken, you get extra boost. And that again is going to rile up the iRacing crowd. And I wonder if there's going to be some slightly disgruntled developers at iRacing who feel like they've worked a long time to build this brand of iRacing and what iRacing stands for. Like, it's not a game, it's a simulator. And they will have compromised on so much over the years for them to feel like they've earned that space. And then iRacing Arcade's going to come out that is definitely unashamedly a game. And again, I don't know whether the brand can stretch that much of iRacing. It's really interesting. So with all that said, so you're very well informed on this channel. You know, you're subscribed to my channel. If you've forgotten, you can hit the subscribe button right now for free. But you are very well informed, and you will go into this knowing that this is an arcade racer, best experience on a gamepad, and then you can enjoy and understand the game for what it is, and you can understand the limitations of the game for what it is. So for example, this is a really fun time trialing game in my perspective, but I'll time trial anything. I'll time trial a shopping trolley in the supermarket car park. Like literally, I'm a racing nut. I like racing stuff. So this game is up my street. And when you're doing time trial, you appreciate all of the lines. You get into a little bit of a flow state. And to me, it reminds me a lot of karting in terms of you realize how much speed you can carry through corners, how aggressive you can be with curbs, how you don't need to hit the brake that much because just by letting off the accelerator, you naturally decelerate. And all that's like good racing fundamentals. Absolutely not sim-based, not sim-focused. It's just good racing in the same way that Trackmania is like time trialing. So either you're going to like that or you're not going to like that. So if you're not going to like that, if you want an iRacing experience with like a bit of a top-down camera, this ain't going to be for you. You're going to be disappointed. Do not buy this game. You're going to regret it probably. You're probably not going to enjoy it. However, if what I've said kind of sounds fun to you, then there are some cool elements that are going to make the game more engaging. For example, building out your HQ is quite interesting. The fact that you can actually position trophies that you've won is really interesting. Upgrading your team is interesting. The ability to hire drivers is interesting. And if you watch a review of iRacing Arcade and they don't talk about hiring drivers, I honestly think then they haven't scratched the surface of the game, because when you hire drivers, then suddenly it becomes almost a little bit more like Football Manager. It becomes a bit of like a Tycoon game where you're balancing how expensive drivers you want to hire. Obviously, the more expensive the driver, the better they are. Balancing that against the randomness slight randomness of how they're going to do, and the prize money they win. And the more prize money you can filter back into your HQ, hire better upgrades, buy more cars, and you can enter multiple series at the same time. And then it's quite cool to actually think, oh, I have a racing squad, a racing team. Reminds me a little bit of what Endurance Motorsport Series by Nacon is trying to go for, if that game ever comes out now. I mean, that would be interesting, iRacing branded as well. So there's a really interesting like replayability Tycoon element here that is completely on top of the pure arcade driving experience. Again, something that iRacing sim fans are not going to like. You are not going to like this. Is if you try and drive the real world circuits like you drive them in iRacing, it's going to make no sense. Like Lime Rock Park, Imola, it's going to make no sense. It's this uncanny valley. You have to strip away what you know from driving that circuit in real world and just forget. The most fun tracks for me to drive in the game off the bat were tracks that I've never driven before. So you have to work out, what's the line here? How much can I hit the curbs? Is it a deep entry? Is it a wide exit? And whatever. So that's all really fun. The tracks where I knew, I had to kind of forget the tracks. However, it is from an arcade racer perspective at some point quite cool to be thinking, I am driving like Imola. It has the vibe of Imola. So I do think the licensing does add some, little extra premium there. However, what this game really needs, and let me know in the comments if you agree with this game desperately needs, in my opinion, a track editor. And this is interesting. I don't know if there's going to be licensing issues with that because of the iRacing license, that if they let us loose with a track editor, I just immediately create MOZA, but that no one's paid MOZA to be in the game. So that is a little bit uncomfortable, but I feel like this game needs more tracks, and doing something like the Nordschleife in this, if the engine can handle it, but that would be absolutely incredible, I think, because the racing is very fun, actually. The racing is fun. The cars do feel different in terms of they have different characteristics. Again, nowhere near on a sim level. I'm not trying to say on a sim level, but they have different characteristics, and it's fun to go back to the Fiat and then go up to the Formula 1 car or the GP car, or whatever they call it here. It's fun to do that. So in my mind, this is a fun arcade racing game. It does show that for all the criticism people give of something like Gran Turismo 7, if you can get Gran Turismo 7 for something like, I don't know, $30, $35, then the amount of content you're getting in that game is like unbelievable compared to, say, a cinema ticket where you go and you watch your film and you're done. Gran Turismo is going to give you unbelievable replayability. And here, this is coming out, I think, in the UK at £25, if I'm correct. Like, there's not that much content in it. So I'm very interested to see what happens here in release week. I just want to be clear, I'm not paid by iRacing or iRacing Arcade to make content on this game, or I don't have to say anything or not say anything. I just tell you exactly how it is, but with my added insight of having worked on Circuit Superstars. I'm very interested to see what will happen in the launch week, because I think, unfortunately, and this is what I warned about that I showed you at the beginning of this video that I said in October 2025, is the mere fact is called iRacing could unfortunately torpedo this, which would be a great shame in my opinion, because for me this is a much better game than Circuit Superstars. The camera works a lot better. I like the addition of the licensed cars, for example. I like the idea there might be more. I like the idea that they've actually put a lot of time into a career mode, which we don't see these days in racing games generally that much. So let me know what you think in the comments. I really want to hear from you. I'm sure the iRacing team will watch this video as well. And just give them your honest thoughts. And yeah, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more like this.